This story takes us back to 2018 and revolves around a woman named Katie Long, a figure shrouded in mystery. We know almost nothing about her. We do know that one fateful night at a party, she crossed paths with a woman named Joyce, and the connection was immediate. They danced, they drank, and the night ended in a hotel room. They had no intention of becoming a couple, just two people enjoying each other's company. Since they had undeniable chemistry, they continued to meet occasionally. They exchanged numbers, arranged meetups, called each other, sent messages. Something sporadic, casual, nothing serious. According to Katie, there was a strong attraction between them, but she could never see it turning into anything more. Something was unsettling about Joyce, something dark lurking beneath her charm. Katie found her magnetic and charismatic, yet she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. And before long, she would discover exactly what it was. Katie and Joyce often talked on the phone, spending hours sharing stories about their past, their childhoods, and their teenage years. But Joyce's confessions were different, more intense, more twisted. Much of what she said didn't make sense, and Katie couldn't quite understand why. Then, almost instinctively, she began recording their conversations. She had a gut feeling that, at some point, Joyce would say something so disturbing that she'd need proof. And then, without warning, it happened. There was a long silence. Katie could sense something was off. She asked what was wrong, and then Joyce said it. "Katie, I killed my ex-girlfriend. I feel like I can talk to you. This is something you should know, so you understand what kind of person I am. I'm not a good person, Katie." At that moment, Katie knew this was never going to turn into a romance or even a fleeting connection. From that point on, she needed to distance herself. But Joyce didn't understand that. She kept calling, she kept texting. She insisted on meeting up. And each time Joyce reached out, Katie recorded everything, every conversation, every confession, each one darker than the last. Joyce revealed names and details, things no sane person would admit. She even confessed that she was married and that her wife knew everything. She knew Joyce had killed her ex. She knew all of her secrets, and now she was planning to leave. But Joyce wouldn't allow it. "Before she leaves me, I'm going to kill her." And Katie knew she had to act fast. Upon hearing this, she didn't end the conversation. Instead, she kept talking to her, recording everything, and meticulously writing it all down. In her mind, two possibilities exist. Either Joyce was completely delusional, fabricating every word, or this woman was truly a murderer. If the latter were true, it was only a matter of time before the police got involved. When that happened, Katie intended to hand over all the evidence she had gathered. However, what she had anticipated was that, in that moment, she had unwittingly become the confidential, a potential killer. And if this woman had already contemplated murdering her wife, what was stopping her from making Katie her next target? This story introduces us to a woman named Shondell Emmett McCott, a 35-year-old whose background remains largely obscure. What little is known about her paints a portrait of a woman devoted to her family, for whom they were the ultimate priority. Born and raised in Guyana, South America, she moved to New York with her family at the age of 13. The McCotts were deeply traditional and closely bonded, humble, kind-hearted people with strong values. From a young age, Shondell dreamed of becoming a chef, a goal she eventually realized. She secured a position as a chef at Life Care Center, a nursing home in Lawrenceville, Georgia, where she quickly won over everyone. Those who knew her described her as charismatic, approachable, and friendly, an ambitious woman with a bright future. At least, that was the case until she crossed paths with what she believed to be the love of her life, Joyce Marie Pelser. Joyce was slightly older than Shondell and had a magnetic personality. She was the life of the party, funny, charming, and effortlessly engaging. She had a natural ability to command attention, and when she didn't, she found a way to make sure she did. It was this captivating energy that immediately drew Shondell to her. At first, they were just friends, but as time passed, their bond deepened into something more. Weeks turned into months, and before long, they were inseparable. Eventually, they moved in together. That was when Joyce's true nature began to surface. Some of Shondell's friends never warmed up to Joyce. She subtly began sowing discord, making critical remarks about them, discouraging Shondell from spending time with them. Soon, the issue extended beyond friends. It became about family, a brother, a cousin, then her father, her mother, even her grandmother. Joyce always seemed to have a reason why someone had wronged her, why they had looked at her the wrong way, they couldn't be trusted. One by one, she isolated Shondell from the people who cared about her most. Shondell became increasingly isolated, and little by little, Joyce's jealousy consumed every aspect of their relationship. Even the very air Shondell breathed seemed to spark resentment. Joyce would pick fights over the smallest things, create dramatic scenes out of nothing, and escalate from shouting to physical and verbal abuse. Every conflict stemmed from Joyce, and her relentless hostility slowly diminished Shondell's sense of self. She became withdrawn and insecure. Her once bright smile and joyful spirit faded. But there was one crucial detail Joyce failed to account for. Shondell confided everything to her mother. As a result, her entire family was aware of what was happening. Unlike what Joyce may have believed, Shondell was never truly alone. She had real friends, loving parents, and supportive siblings, a strong, unwavering support system. Yet Joyce refused to acknowledge this reality. Thus began the toxic cycle of breaking up and getting back together. Joyce would cheat, Shondell would forgive her, and they would reunite. But with the encouragement of her loved ones, Shondell reached a breaking point. She simply couldn't take it anymore. Drawing strength from those who stood by her, she decided to end things for good. At the beginning of 2011, Shondell discovered yet another betrayal. This time was different. This time, Joyce's infidelity was far more serious. She wasn't just cheating. She was leading a double life, maintaining simultaneous relationships with both Shondell and another woman named Rosalind Lewis. She had made promises to both, making each believe they were the only one. Upon learning the truth, Shondell was devastated. She turned to her mother, who firmly told her it had to end, that this was the final straw. She reminded Shondell that she was not alone, that she didn't have to endure this any longer. With this unwavering support, Shondell found the courage to act. Then Joyce came home from work. She was met with an ultimatum. Shondell told her to leave, pack their belongings, and asked her, calmly but firmly, to walk out of her life for good. Amazingly, Joyce seemed to accept it. She gathered her things, left without a fuss, and disappeared into the night. But what seemed like a peaceful resolution was only the beginning of a nightmare. Very next morning, Joyce's delusion set in. She believed this breakup was just another temporary setback and that in a few days, things would return to normal. She convinced herself that nothing was truly over, that they would soon turn the page and be back together. But when she realized Shondell was serious this time, when she saw that there was no going back, she began calling everyone. Joyce became relentless. She reached out to everyone, friends, family, colleagues, acquaintances, asking about Shondell, seeking advice, begging them to speak on her behalf and defend her, but no one wanted to listen. Faced with rejection, she grew desperate. She began driving past Shondell's house multiple times a day, circling the neighborhood, parking outside her door. She timed her appearances around Shondell's work schedule, ensuring she was seen, both on her way to work and upon returning. The calls became incessant. Messages flooded in. She even showed up at Shondell's door, knocking, pleading, refusing to accept reality. Then, one evening, after a long day at work, Shondell returned home to a chilling discovery. Her house was empty. So when she had thrown Joyce out, she had demanded the key back. She never imagined Joyce had made copies. She never thought Joyce would sneak back inside. Yet now, she stood in the middle of a stripped bare home. Joyce had taken everything. She closed the curtains, removed the bathroom mats, and even put down the toilet lids as if erasing all traces of Shondell's life. And the most unsettling part, she had done it all in just a few hours. Shondell immediately changed the locks, believing that would be the end of it. But weeks later, she woke in the middle of the night to a terrifying sight, Joyce standing at the foot of her bed. She had no idea how she got in where she had snuck through, how this was even possible. But what horrified her the most was what Joyce held in her hand. A knife. Joyce was furious, her arms flailing, her face contorted with rage. Shondell's heart pounded, but somehow, miraculously, she managed to remain calm. She spoke softly, de-escalating the situation, coaxing Joyce out of the house without a struggle. The next morning, she went straight to court and filed for a restraining order. Even with legal protection, Shondell never felt truly safe. Joyce's presence lingered. She continued loitering outside her home, sending messages and making calls. No matter where she went, she felt Joyce's shadow creeping behind her. And so, she confided in the one person who had always stood by her, her mother. Shondell knew that if anything happened to her, Joyce would be responsible. Days passed and weeks went by, but the harassment continued. Despite everything, Shondell tried to move on with her life. However, the traumatic experience with Joyce left a deep mark. She didn't feel ready for a new relationship, she was afraid. It was then that she secretly started seeing a man named Ricky Nobles.
Some sources say that Shondell kept the relationship private because she was afraid of Joyce and didn't want to expose him. Other sources claim that the reason for the secrecy was quite different, but we will come back to that later. What is certain is that the relationship was discreet, though Shondell adopted a small strategy to feel safer. She asked Ricky to leave his boots in front of her apartment door. That way, when Joyce passed by, she would see that she wasn't alone. And so we come to Saturday, September 24, 2011. In the afternoon, Shondell and Ricky met at her apartment. They spent some time together, relaxing. By 8 p.m., Ricky had fallen asleep, but around midnight, he woke up startled, saw the time, and immediately jumped out of bed. Ricky was a married man with children. We don't know if Shondell was aware of this, but what's clear is that he didn't want his wife to find out. He quickly dressed, rushed out of the apartment, and went back to his home, pretending that nothing had happened. Meanwhile, Shondell continued to sleep. The next morning, her alarm went off at 3:30. She got up, got ready, and drove to a gas station to fill up her tank. From there, she headed to work where her shift was supposed to start at 5 a.m., but she never showed up. That night, she had dinner at her parents' house. When her mother noticed her absence, concern overtook her. She remembered that her daughter Shondell had been bullied by Joyce, and on several occasions, she mentioned that Joyce could hurt her. Alarmed by this, Shondell's mother immediately reported her daughter's disappearance to the police. However, what she didn't know was that for the next 7 years, the case would remain unsolved, with the police having their hands tied. On the afternoon of the 26th, the police began to take action, with the main suspect being, of course, Joyce. They contacted her and asked her to come to the station. Joyce didn't arrive alone. She came with her new girlfriend, Rosalind Lewis. The two of them entered together, and Rosalind escorted Joyce out of the waiting room while Joyce was interrogated. Joyce's account seemed credible. She claimed that she had spent the entire weekend with Rosalind, watching movies, relaxing, and resting. She said that on Monday, the 26th, she had woken up early, gone to work, and then spent the afternoon with her girlfriend. According to Joyce, Rosalind was her alibi, and with that, they let Rosalind speak to the police. Rosalind's version of events aligned with Joyce's. She confirmed that the two had spent the weekend together watching films and relaxing, but when it came to Monday, things began to unravel. Joyce claimed she went to work, but Rosalind maintained they stayed together the entire day. To verify the story, the police contacted Joyce's boss, who confirmed that Joyce had not shown up to work. After this revelation, they examined Joyce's phone records and discovered that throughout the entire weekend, Joyce had never visited the house. Instead, her whereabouts were traced all over the city. She visited a shopping mall, a park, and a movie theater, but never once stopped by Shondell's home. Realizing that Joyce had lied, the police decided to search Shondell's house. The police discovered that the house was immaculate. There were no signs of a struggle, no scuffle marks, and no bloodstains. Everything was spotless except for two small details. The first was a men's watch next to the bed in the bedroom, and the second was 2 shot glasses and cigarette butts in the bathroom. Shondell didn't smoke, so these items raised suspicion. Between the shot glasses, the watch, and the cigarettes, it was clear that she hadn't been alone that weekend. As a result, the police began asking more questions. They spoke to friends, colleagues, and relatives, and everyone mentioned the same man, Ricky Knowles. They contacted him, and he admitted that they were lovers. He spoke about Joyce's harassment, detailing the entire story, and confirmed that on Saturday evening, he had fallen asleep at 8 p.m. and rushed home at midnight. However, this alibi needed to be verified, and the person responsible for corroborating it was none other than Ricky's wife. They called her and explained the situation, revealing her husband's infidelity. As the investigation progressed, the authorities tracked Shondell's credit card movements, discovering that her last purchase was at a gas station early the next morning. After that, there was no activity. They found her car parked near her workplace, but there was still no trace of her. The next step was to search the home where Joyce and her new girlfriend, Rosalind, lived, but the prosecutor deemed the evidence insufficient. As a result, the case stalled for the next 7 years. At this point, it is important to learn more about Joyce's new partner, Rosalind Lewis. Rosalind was born on August 31, 1971 in New Orleans, Louisiana, into a large and deeply religious family. The Lewis family was deeply religious, firmly grounded in their Christian faith, and devoted to the Bible. They regularly attended church, shared a strong sense of unity, and placed great importance on traditional values. This detail would later prove to be crucial. The Lewis family had lived in New Orleans all their lives. Born and raised there, they thrived in their community. For them, New Orleans was everything. Rosalind grew up as the perfect daughter, embodying all the qualities her family expected. Sweet, charismatic, dedicated to her family, and committed to her faith. She excelled as a student, transitioning smoothly from secondary school to university, and eventually entered the healthcare field, specializing in elderly care. Up to this point, everything had gone according to plan. A good person, a good student, and a devout Christian. However, at the age of 20, Rosalind stood before her parents and confessed that she was attracted to women. This revelation left them utterly stunned. As mentioned earlier, her parents were devout Christians, and this news caused a rift within the family. Some family members were supportive, accepting her for who she was, while others couldn't reconcile their beliefs with her truth. Despite the mixed reactions, Rosalind was resolute. She knew she wanted to be happy, and the opinions of others no longer mattered to her. She was determined to be honest, regardless of whether her family understood or accepted her. Not long after, she took a job outside of New Orleans in Atlanta, Georgia. She packed her belongings, moved there, and began. Over the years, Rosalind met someone she believed was the love of her life, a woman named Joyce Marie. There is little information about this relationship, as Rosalind hardly shared any details about her family with others. She didn't have anyone to confide in, to share her story with, because as you might remember, not everyone accepted her. What little we do know is that at first everything seemed perfect, idyllic even. Joyce was attentive, loving, and devoted. But over time, problems began to surface, especially on Joyce's side. She clashed with Rosalind's friends and family, making unprovoked remarks and casting judgmental glances. Suddenly, she became inexplicably jealous, inventing stories in her mind that made no sense. She would start quarrels over trivial matters, leading to frequent breakups and reconciliations. Joyce thrived on drama. One of the major issues was Joyce's inability to cut ties with her ex-girlfriend. And just when it seemed like their relationship was crumbling, that ex disappeared, making their bond the only thing that mattered. For a time, it appeared that things were going well, and in 2016, they decided to get married. However, when Rosalind announced it to her family, not everyone was willing to attend. Once again, not everyone accepted their relationship. Despite that, they went ahead with the marriage and began their life together. But for Joyce, this relationship soon became a nightmare. She started being unfaithful with numerous women, perhaps believing that Rosalind would never leave her, that she would always be her pillar of support. But inevitably, Rosalind began to grow weary of the situation. On December 10, 2018, Joyce reached a breaking point. She couldn't take it anymore. She arranged a romantic getaway at the Motel 6 in Conyers, Georgia, booking the room for 3 days. On the third day, she planned to end everything. She knew Rosalind so well that she understood she couldn't be left in a familiar place, at home, in a restaurant, or somewhere nearby. It had to be somewhere safe. At least that's what she believed would happen, but after an hour or two, an employee of the motel heard screams coming from the room. The sound was unmistakable. Pleas for help, slaps, cries, and desperate sobs. The man stood by the door, unable to open it. He quickly grabbed his phone and called emergency services, describing everything he could hear and what he could see through the window. As he was speaking, the door suddenly opened and Rosalind collapsed to the floor. The moment he was talking to the dispatcher, the door opened and the victim tumbled out, blood everywhere. Not only was there a pool of blood on the floor, but there were bloodstains smeared across the door, as if she had tried to crawl out. Bloody handprints marked the curtains. Rosalind had hoped for a calm breakup, to sit down, talk, and end the relationship without further drama. But what she hadn't anticipated was that Joyce would bring a knife to the meeting. When Rosalind turned around, Joyce stabbed her 34 times in the back, neck, and chest. Joyce was resolute. It would be her way or no way at all. After the stabbing, Joyce calmly opened the door and stepped outside barefoot, leaving bloodstains behind on the floor and her hands covered in blood. She left the room with a relaxed demeanor, smiling, and according to several witnesses, walked briskly, not running, not seeming frantic, but leaving the scene in a composed manner. Bloody footprints followed her as she walked to her car, where she started the engine. By the time the motel employee heard the screams, Joyce had already fled. He rushed to the door, dialed for emergency help, and asked for assistance. When the police and ambulance arrived, the scene was horrific. Rosalind was able to speak briefly before she lost consciousness. She told them her name and age and identified her attacker. Unfortunately, when she arrived at the hospital, she passed away. The investigation then shifted focus to locating Joyce. They had her name, surname, and age, but her identity remained elusive. While her present life was a mystery, her past was not. 7 years earlier, Joyce and Rosalind had been suspects in the disappearance of Joyce's ex-girlfriend, Shondell. The police had the full case file and all the records and knew that Joyce was unstable and dangerous, most likely on the run. They traced her phone, examining the call logs and her recent locations. However, before they could pinpoint her whereabouts, they discovered that Joyce had been in frequent contact with a woman named Katie Long. In recent weeks, they had been speaking for hours. The police contacted Katie, and when she answered, she immediately admitted that she had been expecting their call. Katie confessed that she had met Joyce at a party and that they had been seeing each other casually. However, once Katie discovered Joyce had a partner, she ended the affair. They only exchanged messages after that. In their conversations, Joyce revealed some disturbing details. Fearing for her safety, Katie had recorded all of their calls, which eventually led to the chilling confession of a murder, Shondell's, but it didn't stop there. Joyce also confessed to planning another crime, the murder of her wife, Rosalind Lewis. Armed with this shocking information, the police asked Katie where she was currently living. Katie revealed that she was in Florida. They traced Joyce's phone to her location and discovered that she was heading toward Florida, suggesting she was either planning to kill Katie Long or at least had it in mind. Katie knew the full story. She knew Joyce had killed her ex-girlfriend, and it seemed likely that she had murdered her wife, too. Katie Long was the last loose end, the final person standing in Joyce's way. The police began a manhunt, setting up a fake traffic checkpoint along the road. As Joyce drove through, she didn't stop. She accelerated and plowed through the blockade, pushing several patrol cars out of the way. The officers gave chase and one car collided with hers, forcing her to stop. She spun out, slammed on the brakes, and was quickly surrounded by police. As the officers emerged and aimed their guns at her, Joyce rolled down the window, pulled out her gun, and fired a shot into the air. The officers in response opened fire on her. At this moment, many would assume the case was over, that Joyce had been shot and killed. But incredibly, as unbelievable as it may sound, Joyce survived, and in her car, the authorities found all of the evidence: her blood-stained clothes and the knife used to kill Rosalind. At the police station, she confessed to the crime, which led to her being sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole in December 2019. However, Joyce never admitted to killing Shondell. Instead, she accused Rosalind, claiming that Rosalind had hired 2 men to drug her, put her in a car, and bury her body in a ravine at Arabian Mountain. Katie Long contradicted this, stating that Joyce had confessed to killing Shondell and intended to blame Rosalind later. Despite extensive searches over the years, Shondell's body was never found. Nevertheless, in 2023, a jury found Joyce guilty of Shondell's murder, and she was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Now it's your turn. What do you think about the case? Do you believe the sentence were fair? Well, that's it for today's video. I hope you found this case intriguing. If so, please leave a like and share your opinion in the comments below. Do you think Joyce would have kept going if she hadn't been stopped? Also, don't forget to type the secret word jealousy in the comments, and I'll give you and now say goodbye for real. See you in the next video. Bye.